Welcome, Rishi. Welcome aboard. Uh, this is the first conversation of what we are hosting for Plus One. As you know, the idea for this particular forum is that how can we address these daunting questions which people talk about in these smaller groups? I would call them as a water cooler conversation. Idea basically being that, hey, can we discuss about these questions? Try and find a solution, if not a solution, possibly a direction, so that community out there comprising of recruiters, sources, or anyone who is in this business of finding people can take benefit from it. So before
Hey,
I
Gaurav.
move on and ask certain pointed questions, uh, you know, I think it'll be great if you can also walk us through a bit about your journey. We also had James today, but unfortunately he opted out. But great, I think we can just kind of collab with him a little later. But over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gaurav. Excited to be here. I think, as we all agree, sourcing has evolved over the years. Just a bit about me. My name is Rishi Banerjee. I lead talent acquisition for the engineering, product, and design functions at Accent today, data collaboration platform built entirely on the cloud. Over my 18-year career, I've seen the talent game transform completely. We went from newspaper ads to Boolean searches, and now we have a whole arsenal of online tools at our disposal to finding people. Um, this is a fascinating industry because the challenges constantly evolve. And I'm very excited to talk about a few pain points, how sourcing has evolved, and what I think works, at least for me, in terms of finding people, as well as even for job seekers in terms of trying to navigate this dynamic landscape.
Fair enough. So yeah, let me just put it this way, right? So I'll try and kind of wear a hat for someone who possibly is into this business or into this role of finding people. So what really happens, no, today I'm so overwhelmed at this point in time, right? So because when I when I kind of go about finding this individual, and this requirement could kind of come in from my hiring manager, or could be from my sales leader, or could be from a potential customer, right? So होता क्या है, I'm so overwhelmed that I get exposed to so much of content. There is this one direction which my organization pulls me in, dude, you know what? Invest in referrals. There is other direction which my own instigative problem solving mind kind of pulls me. Hey, let me invest in primary research, try and kind of peel the onion and get to the details and stuff like that, right? There is this third direction which kind of pulls me in, the most advanced and the renowned technology, what we call as databases, right, globally. And then there is this huge noise around me, which kind of pulls me in about AI, about tools, about extensions, so on and so forth. And then there is this other energy which is pulling me in that, dude, you know what? You're missing the world. Come and get trained, get black belt, get yellow belt, get orange belt. So today I'm so damn confused that what way to kind of go, because eventually I will get a win or I will get a tick once I'm able to get that right guy for that right job or right guy for that right particular sales in my definition today, right? So,
Sure.
thoughts?
I think it's important to distinguish the problem from the solutions that are available out there. You're very
Hmm.
correct that different organizations will have different approaches, different tools that they have invested in, so they would want to drive adoption. So much is happening in this space. Every organization is trying to leverage AI as well as come up with innovative ways to how they can help you search talent. There's a whole online focus on getting trained, being a certified recruiter, sourcer, etc. But I think the problems still remain, although they have evolved. But the basic problems are: A, how do we discover people? How do we find and reach out to the right set of people? How do we engage them? And how do we bring them to the conversation table for us to take it forward from there, right? Like, if you just take a minute to look back in terms of how the industry has evolved, you'll agree with me that the problems still remain the same, different variety in terms of how they've evolved. So there was a time back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when internet was still not so prominent in India. We used to do newspaper ads
Yeah.
for finding talent, right? Very localized. Uh, you you actually had recruiters who would carry a Rolodex of talent when they went and met their customers or when they went in for an interview, etc. But it was very localized. Obviously, the reach was different for different recruiters, etc.
Fair enough.
Then came in the internet era, and then the likes of Naukris and a lot of other databases came in, and they become our primary source for hunting talent. Right? Now we are in a world wherein like Boolean has taken over ever since the internet started. LinkedIn actually came in and changed the game, gave you a much more larger playing field, right? And now there are, you mentioned extensions, AI based, even your outreach message can be written by an AI, etc. Right? But aren't they all addressing the same problems, which is like, how do I find these people? How do I engage them? How do I get them onto the table? Right. So I think we've spoken enough, not us, but the industry has spoken enough about why and what and how around passive talent. There is skill shortage, the supply versus demand metrics are skewed. We want to drive more diversity and inclusion. There are time constraints for filling each role or filling each of these mandates that you're carrying, plus candidate experience has to be taken care of, right? So I think for me, I would distinguish the problems from the plethora of solutions that exist out there and rather talk about the problems, because there's no one size fits all there, right?
So let's talk about it.
It has to be a combination.
Yeah. So when you say problem, right? So, so while there are these solutions which possibly are trying to help an individual, okay, and then there is these problems, right? So because as you rightly pointed out, I think it's a bang on connotation, because in this past 2 decades, world has changed, right? So from baby boomers to millennials to Gen Z and now to Alpha, I think the way you find people then versus now is completely changed. Still, how remains a kind of problem area, right? So, and again, right, I'm possibly not digressing, but trying to kind of bring another aspect. With all these interventions coming in on this while, our learning curve has also increased as individuals.
True.
But do you also feel that kahin na kahin there is a readiness gap? Because aaj bhi, there are all these technologies available, but still the way individual will take that first step to search, which is more relying on what is given to me versus what the context is, can that be a gap? Because I was reading this interesting article, right? So, and what it said was that even today, like as we speak, about 40 odd percent of so-called role discovery or role closure, and likewise about 60 to 70% of sales closure is more like clickbait, that you have an ad, you click on it, you apply your interest, and through which you get closed, versus only 15-20% are those so-called primary research folks who will make their effort, roll up their sleeves, search and find people. So any thoughts on that?
Yes, and I think 99% of the industry is still playing catch up. And that's the reason you will see organizations over the last decade or so having a specific focus on building a sourcing team and then a recruiting team and separating it from each other, just because of that point, right? So sourcing itself is a full-fledged job. When you apply it in a recruiter's context, that's what you call a full desk recruiter, right? But exactly for those problems that you mentioned, right? Am I playing catch up? What else can I do? How can I become more creative, etc.? That's why a sourcer's job exists. I'm sorry?
Ye catch up hai kyun? Why do you think that that we're still catching up?
Sure. It's because folks have one leg in something that has worked for them in the past, and they're trying to put their another leg into something that they think might work for them right now. They're just too bamboozled or interested in these kind of offerings that come up, and try them out, right? Like, I think the focus is shifting, and it has been shifting for some time, right? We are no longer just focusing on how do I attract applicants or how do I attract candidates. I think that's a given. But how do you build relationship with these potential candidates? I think that's becoming more important, right? How do you showcase your company culture even with your initial outreach to them is becoming more important, right? How do you kind of take your values out there and not just have them on your website, but actually implement them while you're looking for people, right? These are things that become so important. And that's why I think a lot of folks are still playing catch up. trying to balance a lot of these things versus everything that's out there for them to try.
So when you say, catching up with regards to actually demonstrating who you are versus just, flying with the rhythm in terms of what's happening around you, which kind of adds a little bit of a noise, right? So I think what you're trying to kind of put across is that people should try and kind of follow a first principle that is, hey, you know what? If this is who you are, demonstrate who you are, find what you're looking for, and then possibly find that what solution works for you versus jumping onto a solution just because it's in the frenzy without even knowing who
Yeah,
you are. So, classic
absolutely.
example could be that, you know what, my first principle says that there is this database in front of me which could sort my problem like this. What is the need for me to kind of go to a community driven engine, which could be like a Stack or a Git or a Behance? Is that what you meant?
Absolutely. And think of it like this, right? You can have a database, but let's apply a marketing lens to it for a second. How am I reaching out to these people in the
Absolutely.
database,
Yep.
right? What is my click rate? What is my open rate? What is my response rate? These all metrics become so important when you're trying to optimize for the entire process and the output that you can drive from this process. Having a database in today's world, I think you can go and procure
Yeah.
a lot of databases out there, right?
Right.
But what is the ROI that database will drive for you, and what is the problem that database can solve for you is even more important, right? You have tools on the open web as well. You can run X-ray searches as well. Any strong recruiter will that's their first go-to stance when it comes to finding new people. But how do you drive engagement? I think that is becoming the hot topic, and that is becoming the most important aspect of this entire journey for sourcing, recruiting, sales, etc. And that's where the focus is right now.
But how many people talk about it, right? So if I just talk about
That's the
recruiting as
problem.
a function, right? So,
That's
and again, feel free to question my guesstimate. So, अगर मैं LinkedIn पे focus करता हूँ, right? So
yeah,
LinkedIn पे at this point in time, there are about 60 million odd companies. Okay?
absolutely.
And there have about 950 million odd people. तो अगर मैं खाली मैथ से बोलूं कि एक typical org में the human resources section is about 4 to 5%, right?
Sure.
Roughly we're talking about 30 million people who could potentially fit this bucket. ठीक है? तो
Sure.
उसको भी क्लीन करते हैं, यूनिक करते हैं, तो मतलब वी टॉकिंग अबाउट लेट्स से 25 से 30 मिलियन रिक्रूटर्स who possibly are there on the platform. But people compare, right? So you brought in a very good point that ठीक है, you're making an effort, but hey, you know what? What's your open rate? What is your recall value? Are people
Exactly.
really appreciating in terms of what you are writing and how you're reaching out to them, right? लेकिन unfortunately आज भी लोग are, hey, you know what? I'm calling from XYZ. I have dash. You have dash. Can we marry?
Exactly. No,
So,
I think that's where the industry, and that's one of the major reasons why most of the industry, if not all of the industry, is playing catch up right now, right? Because very few people have really nailed it down that the focus is on engagement and driving that engagement with a higher quality than just being able to source people or reach out to people, etc. Yes, there's a certain percentage of candidates in the market whom we term as active job seekers, right? However, and yes, you can run a business just by focusing on them for sure. But then, can you do more? Of course, you can do more, right? And I think one of the reasons why we are still struggling as recruiters or as sourcers for us to be able to stay ahead in the curve is just that, right? We are more focused on how many people can we reach out to versus how many people can we actually engage with and bring into the funnel. So I'd like to term it as TOFU, which is like top of the funnel. And how do you measure metrics around top of the funnel of TOFU is much more important to me than how many people enter the TOFU.
yeah. So interestingly, you know what? There was one of my stakeholder, right? So who challenged me, and he said, dude, I give a damn whether you get 50 or 55. I'm worried about this one rock star which is going to impact my
Absolutely.
business directly, right? So, and I
Absolutely.
think it's also a matter of like top down that, hey, you know what, who you're working with and what is the conditioning of this so-called leader or business whom you're working with, because you in a way reflect that uh, outcome, with your efforts.
True. True. I think it works for both. both the hiring manager as well as the recruiting partner, the sourcing partner, right? How many hiring managers can we recall who said, just give me 3 profiles and I'll close the role with this? Everybody wants to see more, right?
Yeah.
Even if they find a next to perfect candidate, they're like, I'm sure something else exists out there. Right? So everybody's shopping. Everybody is shopping instead of making decisions. And I think that mindset also has to change. And I think recruiters can become talent advisors if they can do this in the right way, right? In terms of,
I'm sorry? ये transition कैसे होगा, right? So because here we're talking about this individual who is like pressurized. And again, technology is there to solve him, to find the right people. But just because, he is operating in a certain sense of ecosystem, his entire so-called mutiny comes to this.
It's a never-ending game, right? So you have to set expectations right at the start, as well as continue market intel-driven data-focused approaches when you engage your hiring managers, right? Like a lot of companies have matured to some extent wherein they say we are going to do competency-based hiring, we are going to look for these competencies, etc. Versus there are a lot of companies who are like, let's just wing it and see what's the best person that we can get, right? Now the fact is, should we all do competency-based hiring? In an ideal world, maybe yes, right? But the point is, how do you partner with your hiring managers and how do you make them understand that there's an opportunity cost to not having a role filled as a talent partner or as a recruiting partner is the key to win this game, right?
I think that's where context building is very, very important, because
absolutely
eventually your choice to choose a tool or what's going to be, it's more to do with what is your context. So I think someone talked a very interesting example, right? So he said that, I was looking for people who are data proficient, but he chose to write Excel Interactive. And because the person didn't really have that context, he just went ahead and searched that and, boom.
You brought up a very interesting point. There are companies that make tools and are doing fantastically well just writing job descriptions for you, right? And I think, look, writing a job description, and okay, let's take it a step back. I don't think recruiting or sourcing in today's world is just a HR profession. It's an intersection between being a business advisor, obviously HR, and then being a marketing persona as well.
Absolutely.
Right? How do you take it out to the industry? How do you position the role? How do you sell the role or the opportunity? And versus then bring in a candidate and position the candidate to the hiring manager. These are all more than HR. These are elements of business advisory. These are elements of marketing, etc. So it's a combination, or it's an intersection of multiple skills for you to be successful in a role like this in today's world.
Other perspective. So if I just boil up the ocean, right? So here we're talking about people who are operating in this geography who are still catching up. I would use the word possibly, acquiring more learning to play the A game. And similarly, then there is this other geography where I'm talking about the Western influence, right? So they are more open to try new technologies. They are very advanced as far as searching through dark matter is concerned. They're very ahead of the game in terms of, in terms of engaging with people, talking to people, selling the story right? So do you see, is it more of a communication thing or?
No, I think it's more to do with understanding business metrics and questioning the why do we need this hire for. I think that is a missing point in a lot of recruiters that I also speak with recently. Let's take an example, right? When you talk to a sourcer in your recent times when you've spoken to a sourcer, how many sources come in and say, I first want to understand why we are hiring, what are the pain points that this person will solve once they join, and then talk about what we need. And then I'm going to come back with a total addressable market that we can target, and then we are going to go from there. I think that approach for me is very enlightening because it is solving a problem. Hiring is solving a problem, not just filling a role. Hiring is building an organization further rather than just filling a role. And very few people, unfortunately, will actually look at it from that perspective. People just jump onto, and we have all seen folks who would rather do a control F in terms of finding what are the skill sets I need to find on this resume rather than trying to understand what has this person actually done.
Awesome. Cool, man. I think it was good, chatting up. So according to you, a quick few plus one where you would want people out there who are listening to you to kind of endorse or to invest in their own skill few areas where you would want kind of draw a line of caution that, wait, but dude, you know what, at your own risk.
Sure. I think the two that stand out for me is definitely a recruiter should understand business. If you're a product recruiter, you should understand what your product does. Engineering recruiters, you don't need to code if you're not from that background, but understand what this code does, etc. And how is hiring solving this problem versus what do you need and what's exists out there in the market. I think that's fun. Second is think of more from an engagement perspective and bringing active people into your funnel rather than just inundating hiring teams with tons of resumes to say, okay, I found these resumes, go and choose, right? So how can you rather search for a haystack or a needle in a haystack than just throwing the haystack at somebody's face? So those are two big plus ones for me. A couple of things wherein I want people to be a bit like think about it before you step is just trying to, when you are trying to build a talent pipeline, in your talent pipeline better rather than just saying, okay, anybody with Java can fill my talent pipeline or anybody who has sold to enterprise can fill my talent pipeline. Define it better so that you can actually reap more benefits out of that talent pipeline. And when you look at sourcing automation tools, there's no one size fits all. So based on your discovery, your understanding of what am I looking for, where do I find these people, how do I engage them, think about what tools make sense to you. It's okay to play around a few before you make a decision, but blindly investing in a tool just because somebody else is, I think people should be cautious about that.
Absolutely. A big plus one, and I totally agree that I think it is not to do with the tool, because every tool, any tool is eventually providing a similar or a different or a diverse database, but in different shape and form. But eventually it's more to do with, hey, you know what, how in depth and how the jack do you know your business? If you know your business, you'll be able to kind of probably sell someone who was not even looking for a promising role, right?
Exactly.
No, I totally agree. Hey, thanks, man. Thank you. I think it was fun chatting up.
Thank you. It was
Hopefully,
great catching up.
Yep, we'll have Jamie also kind of pitching in the next conversation what we do. Thank you. I'll tag you on this thread. But yeah, thank you. Thanks
Sure.
Thank you. Have fun.
Great talking to you, Gaurav. Thank you. Bye bye.